If you've watched any of the other interviews that I've done here at Udacity, you'll notice that I'm in the other chair today. And that's because we're talking about a topic that is very important to me. My dissertation research was on using an intelligent tutoring system in an exploratory learning environment to teach students metacognition. And metacognition is really the thing I'm ultimately most interested in. So I'll be talking about that today. So Jason has again agreed to give me my questions for this little interview.
All right, David, let's get started. Why do you have so much interest in metacognition?
So the main reason I have a lot of interest in metacognition is that there's actually research that you've probably covered so far in this lesson that shows that metacognition is the chief determinant in students' success going forward. That if there's one thing we can teach them that will really ensure that they're successful in their later academic career, it's metacognition. It's thinking about, how do I learn? What are the best processes for me? How do I monitor that when I'm trying to learn something? If I'm struggling, instead of just continuing to struggle and assuming that there's something wrong with me if I can't learn this material, how can I actually reflect on this and say, what is it about this that I'm struggling with, and how can I adjust for that? So to really treat the learning process as a first-class object, really think about that as a part of the learning, that the process is something that I can control, that I get to drive my own learning. And this is really important because it's kind of that old principle, if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. If you teach a person to learn, they'll learn for a lifetime. Many times in education, we're focused on teaching students some material, and the material is very important, and I would never insult that. But if you teach a student to learn in general, then that's really going to help them later in their life. And so that's the main reason why I'm most interested in metacognition. I think that philosophically, it's what really determines student success, and there's also empirical evidence that says that a student's mindset towards learning is what will determine whether or not they're successful at new things that they come across.
Oh, wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
What are some of the main challenges in teaching students about metacognition?
So the main challenge is that metacognition, by its very definition, is inside the head. It's I'm thinking about my own thinking. So the thinking is inside the head, but at least when I'm thinking about like the cameras that are in front of me, I can think about how they work. I can reason about them physically. I can reach out. I can adjust them. I can manipulate them. When I'm thinking about thinking, I'm thinking about something that's inside my head as well. And so if I'm teaching somebody, if I'm teaching somebody algebra, I can look at the output of what they're doing. But with metacognition, I'm not looking explicitly on the output of their metacognition. I'm looking at the output of the thought that was reasoned over. So there's a couple layers of separation away. And we're talking so much about thinking, and it's a little bit hard to even have the conversation. That's part of the reason why it's so difficult, is that what are we thinking about and when? So that's part of the difficulty. But because we're not operating on something that we can see, we're kind of feeling around in the dark, and we're trying to figure out what a person is really thinking underneath the hood, so to speak. Can I look at the things that you're actually outputting or saying or writing and use that to infer something about the metacognition that went into it? And it's very difficult, and it's difficult for human tutors. For AI tutors, it's even more difficult because they don't have the benefit of all the information that we have. They don't have naturally the human empathy that I think a lot of teaching metacognition to another person is, that you're a person, I'm a person. To a certain extent, I can put myself inside your mind and I can kind of re-simulate that. Computers have no natural ability to do that. Right. So even just building in human empathy or human thought or human approaches to problems is part of being able to teach them to do, to teach metacognition. So yeah, that's the main reason it's difficult, is because what we're operating on is invisible, and it's not easy to manipulate something you can't see.
For sure.
Yeah.
How can technology foster metacognitive development?
So I think the main thing that we first have to wrestle with is exactly the same issue that I mentioned before, that the main challenge to facilitating metacognitive development is making the invisible visible. Right. Taking what's invisible inside the brain and putting it out on the page, putting it in the software somewhere like that. And so the way we can do that is by structuring the environment in which this development takes place such that students have to make that explicit. So one way we can do it is by asking them to do what we call a think aloud protocol, which is where they go through an activity and just think aloud about it. It's not the best approach because research has shown that when I ask you, while you're doing whatever you're about to do, tell me what you're thinking, it actually changes the way you think. And so I don't get at the root of what you would really think if you weren't actively reflecting on it. Right. But at the same time, it gives you a learning experience of, making your own thought process explicit, which is very valuable. That even sometimes just making students aware of what they're thinking, even if we're not entirely sure what they're actually thinking, just forcing them to reflect on it can be the most valuable learning experience of all. But in my dissertation research, what I ended up doing was taking a certain part of the activity that students were completing and asking them to output that to the page. Okay. So it was constructing theories to explain a natural phenomenon. And part of that is, why do I believe what I believe? That's part of metacognition, is reflecting on the internal reasons that underlie my beliefs. And so we took that and basically said, take whatever it is that makes you believe what you're currently believing and put it on the page. Code it in a certain way as a kind of a classification system of saying, this is an example of this kind of belief, this is an example of this kind of belief, and put it out there. So we're making explicit something about the metacognitive process. It's not always easy. It's never easy, but it's not always even possible. But for certain domains, we can do some things where students are asked to make their metacognitive process explicit. And in fact, that's something that we do, I think, really strongly in this class, or at least we try to, which is take the way you think about the course material and externalize it. Externalize it in the context of your own problems. Externalize it in the context of the solutions that you'd like to develop, and share that with your classmates. And in that way, you're sharing a little bit about how you approach the problem and how you're thinking about the problem with others to get feedback on your metacognition a little bit more explicitly. Again, not easy, and I don't think I can even begin to imagine right now how I might design an AI agent to be a TA or an instructor for this class. But maybe several years from now, based on a project that someone in this class starts to develop, we might start to see a metacognitive agent that's more than just a tutor or a guide. It's actually kind of a partner or a mentor in an environment like this that can mimic some of the things that it wants you to learn to do, which I think is really the best approach for teaching metacognition, is to demonstrate it, to show this is how I would think about this problem that you might want to think about this way. So
that's fascinating.
Thank you again, Jason, for interviewing me on another topic.
Of course, David.
And thank y'all.